Chapter 4 so far has gotten multiple trailers, an ARG, piles of documents, and more, but today, thanks to these items, tons of research, and some secrets found in some old teasers, today I think I've solved the truth behind Yarnaby, who the true main antagonist of the game will be, and even the purpose of the mysterious eye and how it relates to Harley Sawyer. So first, before talking about other characters, I want to revisit our good old friend Yarnaby, because the more I look into him, something isn't adding up, and I think the creators are trying to hide something from us. Because to quickly retread, we know that Yarnaby was made from one of the smartest children in Playcare, Quinn, but upon experimentation into Yarnaby, he lost all of his smarts and became dependent on employees like Harley Sawyer, comparable to a dog or another animal. Yarnaby couldn't speak and could only make sounds, and scientists deemed him to be a failure. But then, what exactly went wrong with him? He physically looks completely normal, and despite his mental shortcomings and super derpy face, yes, I'm using the word derpy going into 2025, he managed to fend for himself 10 years after Playtime Co closed and still roams the factory in Chapter 4. So if he was a stupid, codependent, mindless toy, how did he survive so long while other failed experiments like Bobby Bearhug from the Orientation Notebook and Thomas Clark from the Braun VHS were barely able to survive even a few minutes? What changed? Well, I have two theories. Theory 1 is that Yarnaby might just be lying about how smart or dumb he truly is. Before Yarnaby became, well, Yarnaby when he was Quinn still, he was known for intentionally doing bad on the game station reports meant to log the intelligence of the children before using the best ones for experiments. Quinn seemingly knew of this fate and tried to hide his intellect from the employees before, so it would actually make sense that Yarnaby could truthfully just be playing dumb on purpose to avoid being used in the factory when in all reality he is super smart. My second and possibly more interesting theory is, throughout Yarnaby's logs, he is often demeaned by being compared to things like dogs and cats. This originally led people to believing Yarnaby might have been a dog before he was revealed, but while it's possible these were just metaphors, I think these also might have been meant to be taken literally. Stick with me. In one of the last updates on the Chapter 4 ARG, we got this message in red text from Harley Sawyer, among an array of others, talking about the scientific process of making these toys, where he said, scraps like trinkets, the occasional salamander or bat, probably not many left. This is seemingly implying that in part of the process, the scientists were taking scraps of animals from bats to salamanders to help with experimenting, which would make sense. The devs haven't been afraid this chapter to show us the piles upon piles of no longer living toys, and while there were hundreds, thousands maybe of children living inside of Playcare, there are also thousands of experiments. So it would make sense that this message is talking about the use of other animals as the supply of children ran lower, and I think it might specifically be calling back to Yarnaby. What if, as orphan numbers were getting low and scandals like harvested bodies were being found in Elliot Ludwig's old house shrouding the company in controversy, they tried using real-life animals instead? Their bodies are easier to find, easier to dispose of, and morally was the better option. We do know these scientists tried basically experimenting with anything they could, from terminally ill patients, children, even rats in poppy gel of all things, so the idea of them attempting to use other animals to make experiments makes perfect sense to me, at least. And I believe patient zero of this was going to be Yarnaby, mixing the child Quinn with something like a stray dog or other domesticated animal to test the physical changes when using other creatures. Notice here, when talking about Harley Sawyer abandoning Yarnaby, they say, the mind of an animal does not process grief in the same way as people. If a dog's master dies, it waits around at the same place and wanders where the scent is strong. But 1166 is not fully an animal, even if his mannerisms and behavioral characteristics suggest as much. Which literally sounds like the developers screaming at us that Yarnaby is at least part animal. This would explain why Yarnaby couldn't talk and lost mental cognition like a dog despite being physically intact. It would explain why Yarnaby started becoming attached to the employees, because dogs and other animals are known for their unconditional love for their peers around them that provide things to them. It would explain why they considered Yarnaby to be a failure, because they were testing mental cognition when mixing it with other animals, and it would even explain why Yarnaby was still alive years later. As dogs, for instance, are hunters and scavengers who can sneak up on their prey, just like what we saw Yarnaby do the entire trailer. A very interesting set of coincidences and evidence. But while overall this is just a theory, it's such a cool idea that I at the very least hope this is the truth, because it would be a pretty cool and disturbing twist. Almost as disturbing as you not liking the video. There's still one underlying issue with Yarnaby though, which is that for a while, a lot of people have assumed Yarnaby was going to be the Chapter 4 main villain since they got their own trailer somewhere in documents and lore, but I have always been a bit skeptical of this for a reason I couldn't ever put my finger on. For the past couple chapters, they were always super secretive with the characters, only revealing them a couple weeks before release, since of course they are the focal points of their respective games. So for this one, it just felt really weird for them to do a full reveal of Yarnaby this early compared to someone like Catnap, who was teased like 5 times before he got his full reveal. Plus, when revealing Yarnaby, the devs spoke about him as another chapter 4 experiment, not really the main villain, which left me very suspicious Yarnaby would actually be the main character, especially as other characters like Pianosaurus have also gotten reveal trailers, making it seem like the less important characters are getting revealed now, while the true main villain will get revealed at a later date. And in fact, I think these suspicions were just confirmed in a recent teaser from my last news video for Thanksgiving, showing all the nightmare and smiling critters eating a Thanksgiving meal, which hides a couple secrets. Some small, like the cloth and all the food here being shaped like the eye creature seen in the past few trailers, and some big, like what most people have been talking about, this seemingly new character and silhouette sticking out in the shape of a top hat. Now, if you're new to the channel, first off, subscribe, but second, you might not think that they would actually tease the main villain in a random throwaway post like this, but the devs are actually kind of known for doing this. All the way back after chapter 1 release, for instance, they teased Mommy Longlegs months early in this teaser trailer, which hid her face in the thumbnail. They hid Boxy Boo here on their animation channel at the time, months before he was revealed. Or in this art release for Halloween, we see all of the characters dressing up and celebrating the holiday, and what is this? Catnap wearing a mysterious random blue hat here. The same exact one from the Thanksgiving silhouette. It's a perfect match. Big shout out to It's Lightning, who I first saw this detail from, because this right here confirms this is in fact meant to be a teaser of the next character, who's obviously going to be wearing a large blue hat, and who I believe is likely the main villain of chapter 4. We know there are still new characters yet to be revealed, as there have been leaks relating to chapter 4 and potentially new characters, which I can't really theorize about as a partner themselves, but they do at least confirm there are more characters who I think is being referenced right here in these two teasers. It's just too convenient for them to bring this up multiple times in previous arts looking back, and I think these are our first 2 looks at the next main villain early, like the past revealed characters who got teased a few weeks before their respective reveals. And in fact, moving on, I think looking back might also help us solve chapter 4's biggest mystery of them all: what happened with Harley Sawyer. We learned throughout all of the chapter 4 promo he is seemingly still alive in some way through the story so far videos and the ARG, and it seems like how chapter 3 was focused all on the prototype, this one is going to be focused on Harley Sawyer and the employees, but how? What is his role? Well, all the way back in 2022, with the release of Project Playtime in its ARG, randomly we were given this image showing a mysterious poppy eye symbol. And then a little bit forward in chapter 3, we got this phrase, omniscient eye, or all-seeing eye, a semi-religious word personified as an eye symbol of some sort, like the Eye of Providence, for example, used to represent an all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-seeing being like a god. And clearly this message was referring to the eye symbol here, we just didn't really know how. That is, I think, until today, as after revisiting this, I realized that the all-seeing eye might be referencing Harley Sawyer and his part in chapter 4 and the rest of the story. See, throughout the chapter 4 Yarnaby trailer, we see that we are being watched by CCTV cameras moving and tracking us, which then lead to us finding the eye creature on the computer here. And while for a while I couldn't even come up with as much of a theory on what this thing is, I wonder if this eye is meant to represent Harley as the all-seeing eye symbol we have been seeing for literally years now. Since, as we mentioned, right before we see the eye, we learn that there are cameras following our every move. And again, we learned in these story so far videos that Harley Sawyer was the one watching us through the cameras the whole time. He was even frequently interjecting himself into the chapter 4 ARG, emailing us and sending us cryptic messages. He is the one watching us throughout our entire journey, and the eye we see at the end is likely meant to represent his literal vision throughout the entire factory as he's in a control room watching everyone's every move. The omniscient, all-seeing eye. In fact, maybe it's a stretch, but something that might support this is in a recent chapter 4 merch drop, we got a new shirt that shows Yarnaby sleeping peacefully among piles of TVs with the eye symbols, which makes me wonder if, since we know Yarnaby became attached to Harley Sawyer after he isolated himself with him in the chapter 4 ARG, maybe this image is using the eyes to represent Harley watching over Yarnaby, allowing him to sleep peacefully knowing his master is watching over him in case any incoming intruders choose to step into his path, which is where we, the player, come in to intrude on Yarnaby's safe haven, fight off him and whatever this blue-hatted villain is meant to be roaming around the prison area, and all while also realizing we are always being watched by the man who started the madness we revisited the factory at the beginning to fix in the first place.